Dey say make dey bring money, where I go get money give am now? I no get anything for now. All of us na farm before, but now wey Fulani don chase everybody for bush, you no see anybody work for.
The agony of a mother who wishes quality education for her son, but her desire is threatened by lack of finance. Mrs. Shekwolo Johnson, not educated herself, but interested in the values education offers an individual in life.
Me I know say if my pikin go school, e go bring value to my life. E go take care of me if I old. But now, I no get any means to help am for im school.
She is a resident of Abuja whose son is in primary 2 at 12 years.
Dey say make we bring money for marker, make we bring money for drawing book. Even im uniform sef, dey say make we change am as e come tear. The sandal also cut. So now where we go get money? Even the marker na 1,000, even 1,000 I no get. How we go do now? We just dey manage. I no get any money wey I go help am. I no get.
Her story reflects the weakness of the Universal Basic Education Program of the federal government of Nigeria. Universal Basic Education Program was launched in Nigeria to provide free and compulsory education from primary to junior secondary school, more than 18 years since the inception of the Universal Basic Education Program. In Nigeria, children's right education is protected by law under the Child Rights Act of 2003 and the Universal Basic Education Act of 2004. An education expert, Clement Idoko, says it guarantees compulsory basic education for children.
So it's a right of the children to be given access, so all that government is needed to encourage the children to go to school. It's not anything more. We all know that not everybody is privileged, where you have a very huge disparity between the poor and the rich. That tells you exactly what's happening in Nigeria, because a lot of poor people are not really sending their children to school because they cannot afford the cost of doing so. And when you talk about public school, where you say the schools are supposed to be free, a lot of them are not even living close to some of these public schools.
Nigerians have continued to ask questions on how free this universal basic education is for the children of the less privileged.
It's not free when they ask children to bring uniform, to bring marker and stuff like that. Nothing is free.
You cannot tell me universal basic education is free in Nigeria. Children are not getting the requirements they need.
Following the fact that government at all levels do not fully cover the direct cost on education, parents bear a proportion of the cost of education on their children, even at the elementary stage of primary school. The Director of Basic Education of the Federal Ministry of Education, Dr. Olufolake Davis, speaks on the free basic education in Nigeria.
We said tuition is free. Nobody charges for tuition, but you also mentioned earlier hidden cost. And this is on the part, like we said, education is an investment for all. Not just the government, the parents have to play their role, community have to do theirs. So even in communities where the parents cannot afford.
Although contributions from parents are expected to be small, they still present a significant burden on households' income level.
There are other costs to education apart from the direct cost. To the parents, we have the cost of the opportunity cost. And then we also have other costs of like uniform, even school meal, bags, and the rest of them, because no child will appear in school without having this on. And this, to many people, it may look so insignificant, but to most parents that are barely making the ends meet, it means a lot. So to this end, a lot of support to the parents. We have the cost of the opportunity cost, one, of sending their children to school. What would they be doing otherwise? And then because of the financial constraint in the society, parents face a lot of pressure in meeting their financial needs. So every opportunity to see extra hands to support them will be taken up. And children, some of the parents, and we are agrarian society, some of them would rather engage their children in helping them out in the farm or trading, as the case may be. So if it takes a lot of commitment on the part of such parents to release these children would have served as generating extra income to the family.
This automatically creates economic barrier against the education of the child of the poor. Michael Banda, UNICEF education specialist, speaks on this.
One of those, among many others, is economic barriers. This is a situation where families have no sufficient resources to send their children to school. Particularly on that one, we need to pass information to all families, communities, and our friends that Article 2, Section 1 of the registration states that every government in Nigeria shall provide free and compulsory and universal basic education for every child of primary and junior secondary school. That means that education in Nigeria is free.
Direct cost, such as expenses incurred on educational activities, remains hidden cost. These expenses are concealed at the admission stage of a child into basic schools. Again, Michael Banda speaks on its pressure on the family and the child.
There are other opportunistic costs which comes with free education. These include uniforms, shoes, books, and so forth, which families have to provide. And because of that, families are unable. And in many cases, families involve their children to raise money, to even feed.
He attributed this to the major reason Nigeria has continued to record increasing rates of dropout of school pupils and the infamous out-of-school menace. Worst of all are children who found themselves sourcing for extra income to support the family and their education.
And not necessarily that the money would be spent on school requisites. Now, these economic barriers have led to incessant increase in child labor. Now, child labor is actually prohibited in Nigeria. Article 24 talks about prohibition of employment of children either in factories, in farms, or anywhere. And no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed in work in any factory or mine or farm. And to be even more clearer, hawking, which is very common in Nigeria, particularly in northern Nigeria, is another form of employment. And it is hazardous employment because young children are on the streets hawking from morning to evening, exposing them to various dangers.
These obviously deter many children of less privileged from accessing quality education. Just as in the case of Shekwolo Johnson's son, a 12-year-old Gabriel Johnson, who clears overgrown compound in his neighborhood for a token and sometimes help do other chores. Once Gabriel receives the sum of 500 to 700 naira depending on the volume of the task and the compassion level of individuals who engages him, he heads for his local education area in Kuje Area Council of Abuja.
When I used to work for people when I cut grass, and they used to give me 500 naira, sometimes 1,000 naira. I used to give it to my mom.
But while he does all of this, he loses out in some learning hours. Gabriel goes to school seldomly, and the few times he finds himself in the school, he resumes at 9 a.m. At that time, his peers are already through with the first lesson of the day. September 2022, while Gabriel's mates geared up for new academic session, young Johnson had no books and other writing materials to prepare for the new academic year. Yet, he looked forward to resuming school with his friends.
I don't have book to work in class and my bag spoiled.
Encouraging Gabriel to perform basic numeracy and literacy assignment became a difficult task. Banda once again speaks on the implication of child labor on children's education.
Now, these children are supposed to be in school, and yet they are engaging in these hazardous employment acts. What does it mean? If they are engaged in that and yet they are enrolled in school, they are likely to report to school late.
Banda emphasized that children like Gabriel are likely not to complete the full cycle of basic education.
They are likely also to enroll in school at an older age. They are likely to drop out of the school system and they are likely to underperform in the school system. All these put together, they are likely also not to complete a full cycle of basic, increasing the number of dropouts in Nigeria and out of school children.
A policy advisor in the Civil Society Action Coalition in Education for All, Mrs. Odinaka Ahanono, said hidden cost on education at the basic and post-basic education forces the child of the less privileged into child labor and in turn affecting the foundational education of the child.
Children who are usually involved in child labor often lack basic education grounding, which will enable them to acquire skills and improve prospects for a decent adult work life. This shows that the early age of the child learning will be greatly affected because they are already involved in what they are not supposed to be doing at that stage of their life.
Mrs. Ahanono further expresses concern on the damage of hidden cost on foundational learning in the Federal Capital Territory.
So as it is, you see that some of them are in school, but they cannot be consistent in school. They will also tell you that the school is requesting for PTA money, chalk money, and all sorts. So this automatically sends them away from school. So the children cannot learn at all.
Sampling opinions of residents of Abuja on the issue of hidden cost and the challenges it poses to the education of the poor at the basic education level, these individuals have this to say.
Hidden costs are costs added to the education of a child but are not known to people. But you hear this cost, medical costs, this one stationary costs, these are hidden costs that are not part of the actual school fees.
Students should not be forced to labor that are beyond their capacity. But for them to be able to gather all these hidden costs, you end up finding these children being victims of child labor. So it affects them because by the time they should actually have for their leisure or for assignment homework, these are the time they use for this all this hard labor, all this labor. And at the end of the day, and besides, this hard labor, this labor they get involved, they have not mentally and physically they have not developed.
It will be difficult for a lot of parents to be able to provide some of these things. The reason is even the school fees, they find it difficult to pay. Then you are now bringing other things like duster, tell them to bring broom, tell them to bring dustbin and other things, you understand? So it becomes difficult. So in this kind of issues like this need to be handled a lot of understanding in the sense that you need to put the parents into consideration.
For the extra costs, we are told to pay extra, maybe 5 or 10 or 20,000 extra. It affects, it is demoralizing.
Whenever you keep asking, bring this, bring that, especially in the primary level of the school and the government school, they keep asking some schools, they even ask, go and bring all these things. Actually affects because the main thing is that it's better that she creates, if it's school fees they will pay, than bringing all this things because it's not all that are living with their parents and it's not all that can afford it.
You know why I say it affects the student? Because in this generation now, to even get money to eat is not easy. So let the government try and produce all these things for the student.
Let the manager of the school put everything, the price together. Say social amounts every term. Let them include that tissue, toilet soap. Let them include it. That are sending children because of tissue, soap, this, that. Let them include everything for the school.
The reason why it can affect the attendance of a child is that if, for instance, that pupil A, his parents is what to do, that person can bring, and pupil B, the parents cannot afford to do that. You know, psychologically, when a child is in the class and he's not measuring up to others, At times we call the child to go to school, say, I'm not going. Number two, that auntie will not be her friend or his friend. Or the teacher will not be her friend. So if you are afraid of that teacher, and in some cases, it can result to beating.
You know, say now money no day. And the way they go, they demand for marker, duster, broom, all those things. They affect the student because say, if people no get money, no bring, the teacher no fit mark the attendance for them. So it go, if pikin can't know see something like that they happen, you go there somehow for the pikin, and the thing no go they flow well for the pikin.
Arguably, others insist that this occurrence, which appears to be infractions, occur between the school management and the community. An education expert, Dr. Sunday Jibril, insists that the Parents-Teachers Associations have hijacked the administrative functions of the school, thereby imposing incessant monetary demands on children's education from fellow parents.
Now, these hidden costs is not imposed by government and PTA and CBMC. These are committees set up to take care of schools in the neighborhood by the community themselves. You understand? So what happens is, to run your home, you need to do some extra things to keep the home going. So this costs the community. They formulate these costs for obvious issues to help in administration in the schools, and purchase of materials, and sometimes we take voluntary teachers, call them voluntary teachers, and they pay them up to 5,000. But in a community where they are rich, they can even give them 10,000. Not that it is salary, but a token to maybe stimulate them as an incentive to continue coming to work where there are no teachers. So these are the hidden costs. School cannot give you uniform in public school. School cannot give you Bible. School cannot give you pencils. School cannot give you textbooks. They give textbooks, quite all right. You understand? And then feeding. You must make sure you give your child, we don't say balance, adequate diet. Adequate means a lot of minerals, vitamins, protein, and things like that. Spinach, beans, eggs, meat, and so on and so forth.
I now realize that it is the PTA people that put this kind of money together, which is not supposed to be like that, because who gave them the right to do so?
There is even fees which the parents and guardians actually voluntarily decide to take care of in a way of supporting the school as a way of partnership. And despite that, at the end of the day, they are still being levied what these fees we call hidden costs. And by the time you combine all this together, the one they voluntarily has offered to do, and these hidden costs that cannot actually be calculated from the beginning, at the end of the day, you see that it's no more free education, and it's actually affecting the parents, is giving them a lot of burden.
Who gave them the power to do so? To be imposing such amount of money on other parents. There is a woman I know of, because of this small money of bringing rake, bringing cutlass, bringing small things, she could not send her children to school, which is not supposed to be so.
The Executive Secretary of the Universal Basic Education Commission, Dr. Hamid Boboyi, speaks on the need to provide assistance to parents of children of the less privileged.
And I think the whole idea is to see how do we empower those particular kids within those difficult environments.
Dr. Davis further agreed that the Nigerian government needs to do more
in terms of giving soft landing to parents, supporting them, those that enroll. We have some projects on ground that give such support to parents of such vulnerable children that may not enroll because of this hidden cost of taking the children to school meal, uniform, and the rest. Even some of the projects will provide uniform for such parents, even support the mothers. Even in communities where the parents cannot afford, why can't there are well-to-do people within the community can support this? The states have to do their role, play their role. Non-government actors, non-state actors, the community, let's all rise up. These children belong to all of us and play our role. Ensure that these children are in school.
The government then introduced conditional and unconditional cash transfer program to improve enrollment and retain children in basic schools. in selected states across the Federation of Nigeria. The government also introduced school feeding program to retain children of the less privileged in schools. But then, how well has this fared?
We saw surge in enrollment. Why? Because it helped parents to offset certain bills. Because a lot of parents do not want to send their children to school just simply because they want to send them to hockey and do all manner of many things to see that they offset home issues. And so if that is taken care of by the government, the parents will have been relaxed and willingly send their children to school. So a lot of responsibility are really pushed on the parents.
There is what they call unconditional cash transfer. This is just to encourage people. It's funny anyway to me. Why should somebody encourage me to take my child to school? You understand? Especially up here. They give up to 50,000. And in the end, they become an almajiri. These are some of these issues. You understand? And there is this homegrown feeding. It has even stopped. Because the committee in charge of even cooking the food, they end up packing the eggs, taking the beans and rice to their homes. We had so many episodes here that they have to stop it. They had vendors, what we call vendors, who do this. Only breakfast. So you see, these are some of the things where our government, the issue of hidden costs is as you are thinking, and it's even beyond that. It's what parents carry. Some are, it's a must, you must wear uniform. It's a must, you must buy shoe for a child. Isn't it?
So government should do whatever they like and ensure that they abolish any hidden cost if the education is free. But if it's not free, let it be known that it is not free so that people will actually prepare from the beginning that this is the cost of taking care of my child or children in school, that should be in school.
Chikolo Johnson's story and that of her son Gabriel Johnson shows that the government, through its Universal Basic Education program, needs to plan and create alternative ways of meeting the needs of children in basic and post-basic classes on direct cost at the elementary stage of education. This report was produced by the Voice of Nigeria in partnership with the AD4 TV Radio and sponsored by Makato Foundation and Willie Shoyinka Foundation.